these plants, the pharmakeia,
Mm.
the experiences that were used to teach acts of magic, to teach acts of sorcery, to also teach why they came about. Why does this plant have this magic? Oh, it's because when the blood of the Titans were spilled upon Earth, that is how this plant gained its power and bloomed.
Welcome to Witch Talks, the series for spiritual seekers, witches, and enlightened souls. I'm Hannah the Suburban Witch, professional tarot reader, astrologer, and witch, and I hope you're ready to get up close and personal with your favourite witches. Hello and welcome. I'm so happy to have you here with me, sharing energy, sharing space, and boy, do I have a good episode for you today. Before we get into it though, we're going to be talking a lot about writing and writing craft and stories. And if that sounds like something that you enjoy or you want to enjoy if you're an aspiring writer, did you know that I have a free writing Discord server over on Discord? It's called Word Witches. It's super fun. It's low key. You can be as involved and interactive as you want to be. But if you'd like to write, if you want some community support around that, come and join us. The link will be in the description. On that topic, obviously November's coming up, which usually for me means NaNoWriMo. Unfortunately, if you weren't aware, there's been a lot of scandal around NaNoWriMo in the past year, around unsafe spaces online, and now the most recent scandal is around their promotion of AI and using AI for writing, which is just so wrong. So, I will not be promoting NaNoWriMo anymore, but unfortunately, the concept of taking out a month in my year and using that for writing is now something that I will live and die by because it works so well for my ADHD. And so I will still be writing in November, and I plan my entire year around having that month to write. So if you would like to join me in writing outside of NaNoWriMo, please join me in the Word Witches server on Discord because we'll probably be talking about it. I'll be very active in November at least. And you'll still get that community vibe without having to be linked up with a not so great company. But without further ado, let us jump into our wonderful episode with Marshall. Are you ready? I hope you're ready. Let's go. In this episode, I'm chatting with Marshall, the Witch of Southern Light, and I am so excited to have Marshall join us again here on Witch Talks, as he was a guest on season 2. If you want to listen to that episode, it is titled Cunning Words. Marshall is a queer, practicing traditional and folkloric witch based in Texas. He's the co-host of Southern Bramble, a podcast of crooked ways, and writes a column for Patheos Pagan called The Southern Light Diaries. When I last spoke with Marshall just over a year ago, it was about the release of his first book, Cunning Words, a Grimoire of Tales and Magic. And today we are catching up with Marshall and learning about his second book, The Red Mother. So let's get into it. He's joining us via Zoom all the way from Texas in the United States. Hey, Marshall, welcome back to the show.
Hello, hello. I'm so happy to be here. That's quite the introduction. I was like, did I send? I didn't send. Oh, wow. She wrote this about me. Thank you.
Sometimes people have stuff like on their website. Sometimes it's like cobbled together from stuff
Yeah.
that I know or we can figure out, or it's just, yeah, just what's out there in the world and what we know of you and putting it together.
Well, I loved it. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So first off, your latest book, as of this episode came out like 2 weeks ago. So congratulations. This is amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Tell us all what it is about. Give us the blurb, the summary on the back of the
Yeah.
book, what it would be
So
saying.
this book it's The Red Mother. Um, I do love the description, so I will tell it. It's pretty good. The Red Mother is the second volume in the Cunning Words collection, and it will be a collection, so that kind of gives away a little bit right there,
Ooh.
right? And an exploration into the witch's journey. Through tale and rhyme, learn the craft of weaving charms, enchantments, and spirit work. Read of pacts made at crossroads, knots of power tied, twisted wishes, and death-defying miracles. Let the Red Mother guide you. Her tale, her spirit, her odyssey is written within, for the most cunning to discern and adapt. This volume continues the Cunning Words grimoire tradition of teaching the craft through narrative, as well as a manual of rites. The practical magic and unique catalog of spirits within is inspired by the folkloric witch and the historic compendiums of spirit conjuration.
Did you write that?
I did,
Of
yeah.
course you did. Of course you
Of
did.
course I did. I read the whole thing.
Well, you know how
No,
sometimes people write stuff
oh
about
no.
it for you. But no, that's beautiful.
Thank
Fantastic.
you. Well, so as I said, this is a somewhat of a continuation of the Cunning Words
Hmm.
collection, and as I say somewhat because it's not just a continuation; it's a mixture of a prequel and, well, I think I've coined this. I can't be 100% sure, but an alongside quel. So,
Oh, yeah.
the Red
Alongside
Mother
cool. I like that.
alongside quel,
Yeah.
yes, the
Yeah.
the Red Mother is introduced in several stories in my first book, Cunning
Hmm.
Words. The first one being Our Mother in Red is how she's
Hmm.
introduced. And she kind of pops up in different stories and places when she's kind of needed most or when she has something to offer or trade. And I, as I was writing her, felt like I was inviting this presence to tell me more, share more with me. Um, and I felt her, like I felt this spirit had so much more to share, to tell, and so I acted in good faith to write her stories. Um, that's what ended up becoming the Red Mother. We get her origin, we get her beginnings, we get
Mm.
her travels, her, like I said, her odyssey. This is her magic she is sharing with me and the world in a, a collection of stories, narratives, rhymes. There are epic poems in there that kind of go all over the place with empowering things, with horrifying things, with death
Mm.
and rebirth. Lots of weaving, lots of red thread, of course, as always. Um, but this was something that, as it kind of unfolded to me as I wrote it over the period of a year and a half almost, there were things I would start stories that I had no idea how they were going to end, and as I would write, they would kind of unfold before me. I got to be the reader of my own story that I was writing, and it was so miraculous. It was so I mean, I hate to use the word, but it was so cunning, this experience. It felt like I was sharpening my mind and my craft writing this book. She is inspired by the concept of Old Mother Redcap. If you've ever read the Black Toad, I know I've talked about it before, but it was a huge inspiration to my writing, to the stories that I put together, and specifically the Red Mother, based off of Old Mother Redcap. The term was used for cunning women, wise women, alewives, even fortune tellers, and there was a couple of actual famous women who were given that title. One of them, uh, just so I have it right here, because I did put it in my introduction. One of them was named Jenny Bingham. Yes, born in the 17th century in Camden, England. She was one of the first that we have in documentation, and then the name kind of caught on for that type of person. The original, of course, having worn a small red cap.
Hmm.
And you might also translate it as a head covering, a cloak, a cape. So that does tend to show itself in the stories on a regular basis.
Hmm. If no one can see me right now, but I'm wearing a red coat and a little bit of a red bra breaking through as well, because I wanted to really embody that red mother energy as we were chatting today. Because as I was reading, I fully related with her. Not that I've been through any of this, the situation she has, or necessarily, but she was so relatable. Because if I was that character, I would have
Mhm.
reacted exactly the same way. That's how it felt. She was doing things that felt really justice oriented, but also in a way that, she got out clean in a way that I'd probably do the same thing, right?
I mean, throughout the whole book, she definitely gets her hands dirty here and there. But
Hmm.
the thing is there's always a purpose behind it. There's always an agenda.
Yes.
There's always a lesson to be learned. And I think a lot of those lessons are learned through the power of story, which
Mm,
is, of
I
course, why it teaches magic.
I love this method of it, because I mean, look, I love a good spell book, but they read like a recipe book a lot of the time.
Yeah,
And who sits down and reads a recipe book? Like, that's not, I mean, some people do, yes, granted,
sure.
but that's not my idea of how I learn. I would learn by making the cooking and like making that recipe, but I also learn through reading. And I heard oh, I didn't hear it somewhere. It was probably a meme or somewhere online. Someone said that learning, nonfiction is learning through fact, and fiction is learning through imagination. And I thought that was brilliant rather than just dismissing fiction as not learning, because it is learning. And the way that
Absolutely.
you've done this, what it reminds me of, and I had this question for later, but I'm going to do it now. What it reminds me of is Greek mythology or just mythology in general.
Absolutely. That was another huge inspiration to
I was
me.
going to ask if it was an
No, it
inspiration to
is.
you.
Greek mythology, Norse mythology, mythology in general that
Mm-hmm.
informs a spiritual experience and informs a
Yes.
spiritual belief. It informs magic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge lover of the story of Circe in Homer's
Mm.
Odyssey. Of course, I read Madeline Miller's Circe as well, but
Yeah, oh my
like
God, yes.
learning about the way in which these plants, the pharmakeia,
Mm.
the experiences that were used to teach acts of magic, to teach acts of sorcery, to also teach why they came about. Why does this plant have this magic? Oh, it's because when the blood of the Titans were spilled upon Earth, that is how this plant gained its power and bloomed. Or
Mm.
maybe a sacrifice made for someone you love and being reborn into a plant. Hint, hint, that may come across in the book somewhere.
Yes, I
Like
was just
that,
thinking of that one.
yeah, like these are stories that inform our magic.
Mm.
You know, a lot of times we think about correspondences with herbs and whatnot and the virtues of planets, and we think like, well, why?
Hmm.
And many times there's a story there. I know I've talked about Hyacinth in the past, came from the Greek myth of Hyacinthos, the lover of Apollo who was slain, and to keep his soul from entering the underworld and always wanting to be with him, he stopped it and instead turned him into the flower we now call the hyacinth, which is now one of the reasons why the hyacinth is so popular in queer magic and gay magic. It's very popular in gay weddings. It's a symbol of that queerness and that love.
Mm.
Um, there are a lot of plants that have virtues with such stories, and there are some that have none that I wanted to give a story to. So this was truly an exercise in expanding that imagination and really kind of being like, well, why does this plant have this virtue? You know what? I think there's something there. And I think those stories inform us deeper than I love my Llewellyn's complete book of correspondences, but I do think that they stick with you on a
Hmm.
deeper, soulful level when you feel connected to those stories.
Yes, storytelling as a form of learning in that aspect, I think, is so much deeper than rote learning of facts. So yes, absolutely. I mean, even the way you've named characters and having
Mm,
that relate in with their story or their reason, and without giving any spoilers away, it's really done in such a way that when we read Greek myths we go, oh, they're called this because we have this word now, and we sort of go
yes.
retroactively, right? Whereas yours is like, obviously it didn't come from your story because you've written it now, but it could, right? Someone reading it
Right.
1,000 years in the future may not know that, right?
Yeah, there was even a character who I specifically named something that referenced to Greek mythology.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason why, and I think people who pick that up will know. Um, I think that's one of the reasons why it's part of the Cunning Words collection, because there are lots of little things that are meant to be just slightly picked up.
Mm-hmm.
You might not always know what to do with it just yet, but you'll pick it up.
Mm. Now, with the two books that you've written, obviously
Hmm.
they're part of a series, a collection.
Yeah.
Can you read them by themselves, or do you have to
So
read them in order?
you do kind of have to read them in order because they inform each other. The
Mm-hmm.
first one is the opening. It's kind of like my first grimoire with stories, and it's setting the scene of things to
Mm.
learn. Um, the Red Mother starts actually adding more to it while also filling in gaps you didn't know you were missing. Um, but the very first story is called Spirit Contracts Part Two because you learn of the actual first initiation of the Red Mother. The thing is you've actually already read it. You just didn't know
Mm.
it was her.
Mm. I'm gonna have to go back and read Cunning Words again. It actually lives right here within
Oh,
arm
good.
reach of me at all times. The amount of times I flip it open and I read through it or I check something. And I've even though they're not all appropriate, I have read a few of them out loud to my daughter, the ones that are appropriate.
There
She's
really are
7.
some really great like
Yeah.
stories that I think kids would love. A couple of
Mm-hmm.
them definitely for more mature
Yes.
ears. But no, I truly, and to be perfectly honest, look at the Grimm's fairy tales. A lot of
Yeah,
those were probably for more mature ears as well.
absolutely.
Maybe
And
less sexual in nature, but
she kind of like really settled down. She's like, "Can you read me another one, Mum? Can you read me another one?" And I think as well, because they are a little darker, that
Mhm.
sometimes grabs your attention. Like, oh, this feels like something I probably shouldn't know about, you
Yeah, it's
know?
like this is a little naughty.
Yes,
I want some more.
exactly. There was one in the Cunning Words one. There's this story where basically the grandmother is teaching what to do if the villagers come along without spoiling everything, and
Mhm.
that whole story and what happens with that. She loved that. She loved that.
And and they may make an appearance again in this next book as well. Small
Mm,
appearances, because this one really does work with the Red Mother specifically.
mm,
But she definitely travels the landscape and she comes across many people.
mm. Now, I wanted to mention as well, because
Mhm.
for people who are not writers, they may not realize how difficult it is to write a short story. I'm a writer. Short stories, I can't do them. I can't get it all into, like, being able to do that is a skill and a talent. Mine end up being like 100,000 words long, and then I have to cut out thousands and thousands of words. I can't do it, right? I've got too many words in there. The ability to tell a fully fleshed out story in only so many words is such a talent. Did you did this come naturally to you? Did you work on this? Did you have to learn this? How did you know how to do that so well? Because you have done it really well.
Thank you. Um, you know, I always loved writing poetry and prose. When I was younger, I was in dramatic interpretation in high school, so I did a lot of like URL competitions that involved uh, performing poetry or performing prose or even duets or monologues. Um, when I started writing a lot more later in my life, like just honestly a few years ago, writing these short stories. I mean, honestly, if you look at my beginning ones, they're really bad. But so proud of them because I felt like I enjoyed, you know what, I'm gonna rephrase here for a second. There is a type of anime called slice of life. I don't know if you're an anime fan or if anyone out there is listening.
I
There's
love
a
anime, but
category
I
called
haven't heard
slice
of
of
that.
life. It's at least this is the way I was told about it. It's the way it's presented to you is you're taking like a cake or a pie slice out of someone's life, and that episode or whatever it is just that pie slice. You may not always know what came before. You may not always know how things go afterwards, but you're getting that pie slice. And I really liked writing those little slices.
Mm,
Um, kind of when you don't have to start from a point of introducing every single character, but instead they just start talking to each other and you kind of figure out the context along the way. Those can be very simple days, or those can be the most complex days or slices of your life ever. And so sometimes I liked to write these kind of slices, these chunks of people's lives, maybe an experience they went through. Um, that's kind of how I started with when I first started writing Cunning Words. It was a chunk of someone's experience, and it just kind of started to grow from there. And after a lot of editing and advice from friends and people I trusted, I learned to curate it a little bit more. But I didn't get educated in writing very well much.
mm,
I'm a hairstylist, so I didn't have any college experience, and I was in GT English in high school. That was our like small that was like our kind of like another form of special ed where it was called the gifted and talented. They don't call it that anymore because of obvious reasons that we've all evolved and changed with, but
mm-hmm,
um it was always kind of focused a little bit more on a lot of the creative side of things. So
mm,
um when I was in high school, we were trying to do a project called the Meaning of Life project, where a group of us would get together and we'd each present something for the class after like several weeks of putting this thing together. And I actually came up with the idea of a eulogy. That was the way we were going to present our thing. We were going to enact a full like list of eulogies. Someone who passed away. We took pictures. We each wrote a eulogy about it, and it was the impact they had on our lives. Everyone thought that was so weird, but also so different from anything anyone had done out of all the other classes. Um, and that really stuck with me because sometimes I do think it's that oddball way of presenting something that really sticks with you forever afterwards. It touches you in a
Mm.
different way. And I do think a lot of these stories are kind of oddball. They definitely don't always give you the most um this is a good person and they're virtuous and you want to root for them because they're good and virtuous. They're
Mhm.
not. They have
Mm.
faults like all humans do. They have desires of revenge. They have desires of trickery. They have desires of lust. They have desires of things that sometimes have to learn lessons from, like we all do. I think that actually connects people
It's more
to
real.
stories more
Mm.
than rooting for the virtuous uh protagonist, you know?
I think the virtuous protagonist can be very boring.
It is boring, and to be perfectly honest, where's that story? Why do I care then? If they're that
Yeah.
great, then go and be great over there.
Yeah, we want someone who gets things wrong. That is more relatable.
Well, when it comes to witchcraft, and this is, and I'm not going to get like into huge like definitions of what is and isn't a witch, but when it comes to witchcraft, in general, it's meant to be kind of understood that it is a crooked path. If it is one of those where there is the light with the dark and they kind of go hand in hand, and if you can't really focus on all one and forget the other exists or act like the other doesn't exist.
Mm.
And I really do think you go through that kind of twisted road with the Red Mother in this book.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I really loved seeing in your book.
Tell me.
So, there is a bit of I'm going to say it's a taboo topic, mainly because I've already
Sure.
had a 1-star review because I touched on this topic politics.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So,
Uh-huh.
I am so happy to see you get explicitly political in your book. You mentioned it like very much like, yes, I am getting political because witchcraft is political. I think that is wonderful. I wholeheartedly agree. To the
Hmm.
person who gave me that 1-star review because I got political, thank you very much. I shared that as content and I got thousands of views on that and more people to the podcast.
I
Thank
think
you.
I like that as well.
Yes. I was going to say there's an author's note at the end of the story about the robin and the snake. And I wanted to
Hmm.
ask if I can read it out.
Please. I
Okay.
was going to look it up. Please.
I've already typed it out.
Excellent. Perfect.
So you wrote at the very end. So some of the stories have like an author's note, which is a great way to just sort of like give a little bit of extra information outside of the story, I think.
Hmm.
So it says it's 2024. And in Texas, our government is trying to sue PFLAG, so parents and friends of lesbians and gays, for access to their records regarding parents with trans children. Last year, a Supreme Court justice who voted to overturn Roe v. Wade based on the 14th Amendment, the right to privacy, wrote in his statement that the other Supreme Court decisions based on the same right to privacy should be re examined. This includes same-sex and mixed race marriages. One of the core tenets of my witchcraft is my values as a humanist. The accused witch throughout history has been a vulnerable and marginalized person. To call myself a witch is a political act, and it is my belief that this is one of many reasons witchcraft itself is inherently political. Governments across the United States have taken an opportunistic turn in targeting the queer community using propagandist words like groomer and indoctrination because we want a safe place for queer families and queer minors to be their authentic selves. I was 13 when I came out as gay, and I knew years before to see my own attempt to legitimize removing trans children from their homes under the guise of protecting them from harm is sickening. On this mentality, on this regressive act, on these hypocritical monsters enacting it, I give them the robin and the snake. They deserve nothing more. And tiny, tiny little spoiler if you haven't read the book, the robin and the snake are. No, I'm not gonna. No, should I ruin it? I don't want to ruin it.
You know, it is one of those things. I know I want to as well. I mean,
It
you know
gives
what?
like I think it gives the vibe. Okay, skip ahead like 10 seconds if you don't want to hear this. but the robin and the snake are the red mother. And it's this almost a baneful energy or protective justice energy that the red mother inherently has. And I think that shows almost a really good almost motivation. That whole story, I just thought it was done wonderfully. I loved how political this is, how, as I said, explicitly, like you have stated it out there. This is what I stand for. This is what energy I'm sending for the people that are doing these things. And I think that is wonderful. So, A, applaud you. B, wholeheartedly agree. Three, absolutely support you.
Thank you. You know, that story was one that every single story that is in this book has not been written in the order in which it's read.
Mm-hmm.
They all came to me at different times under different purposes. You know, back in 2023, when I was writing this, there was a huge shift in the way that the right-wing political agenda was pushing anti-queer everything. It
Mm-hmm.
was, drag queen story hours. There were like laws being pushed where you couldn't wear drag in public. Mind you, many of these states have found that this goes against the First Amendment. You cannot infringe upon the right to free speech in the United States. But they still keep pushing them, state after state. They were, two states, Texas and Florida, were trying to push laws where they could take children, trans, non-binary, questioning children from the supportive family of homes to put them in foster care. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was a foster parent. I know how underfunded and hard that system can be to take those kids away from their loving parents. And I don't mind doing a little light spoilers. We won't give away the whole story, but this story is about queer families. This story
Mm-hmm.
is about um, a place where we can thrive, where we can be ourselves, and it means nothing but love and beauty.
Mm-hmm.
When these people try to take this from us, I do think the way in which we know so much about the right and wrong side of history comes from stories. It comes from stories throughout history, whether they're fiction or fact. We know that because we can look back and watch, but we're living in it right now. And I'm living in it right now. I'm a queer man living in Texas, you know?
Mm-hmm.
we I can see how wrong it is, but there are so many people that are unaware, are ignorant of it, don't know what's going on, or think, well, I mean, you really shouldn't be exposing them to that anyway, or schools shouldn't be grooming children
Mm-hmm.
into being gay. You cannot be groomed into being gay. I just want to put this out there just so that's
Yep.
very clear. Drag is not grooming, it's an art form like painting, like waxwork, like performance art. All
Mm-hmm.
these things deserve a space, um, giving a safe place for kids, minors, or adults who want to be their authentic selves should be the most humanist ideal. And I do take that to heart when I write about it because I want it to be so clear
Mm-hmm.
who is on the wrong side here. And hopefully maybe this story will be one read for years to come.
Would you ever, would you ever like print out just that story without, or maybe with the author's note or without, just, I don't know, like letterbox drop its places? Like, I think it's so powerful.
Oh, wow. I never thought about that.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I have a copy of it. I know I could print it out.
I mean, you wrote it, you're allowed to do that, but
That's right. I
like,
can do whatever I want with it.
it could, I think it's a really powerful story and it does showcase, as you said very clearly, this, what they're trying to destroy isn't the evil thing that people presume or think it is or are being told it is. And, this is again one of those stories that I thought, I'll read this to my kids. This
Mhm.
is one of those ones. And it shows that, as you said, that right and wrong and people almost like people coming in and presuming and then doing something that makes it even 10 times worse. Like it's just very clearly demonstrated in a way that's easy to relate to.
Yeah.
So I
Thank
thought
you.
that
Oh, I love
was
that.
really good. Yeah.
I do love that we have brought up the fact that the Robin and the Red Mother are one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want to now that we've kind of opened that door. One of the things that really stood out with me and that I think is so fascinating while writing this, a couple of them. The first section is called The Ballads of the Red Mother, um, because there is an element of song here, of music that you You can't hear music when you read it. So it's going to be have to one that you interpret for yourself. And I found myself humming and whistling over the past year. Like it was something that was started to come out of me. I was never a big whistler. I was never a big hummer in general, but I find myself whistling constantly. Not only have I gotten a whole lot better since writing this, but the practice of it has seemed like it's almost like it's part of the spirit of the red metal that I'm
Mm,
touching, connecting to. Her bird song is very, very widely written about in here. And I think, I'm a I don't think that I don't believe the robins are native to Texas, but we have a lot of robins around here. That red-breasted robin has become a very, very close spirit in my heart.
hmm
And I really kind of put the two together in my stories and in my craft.
I love that. I didn't learn how to whistle until I was like 23, which feels very weird to say, but I literally could not whistle. And then I ended up working with birds in Bolivia. So we had like 70 birds. And I'm not kidding you, they taught me how to whistle. The birds themselves. Like there were
Really?
macaws, not so much the toucans. The toucans did not teach me, but the macaws did. And they could talk. They spoke Spanish, but they could talk. And they taught me to whistle. And it sounds so
Wow.
weird, but I love that you've also got this like bird whistling thing as well, that it's come out of this energy. I think that's really beautiful. I can't whistle very well, but I can whistle. Maybe I'll whistle more when I'm reading. I've had a song on repeat, like songs on repeat in my head whilst I've been reading The Red Mother. So there could be that
Really?
absolute connection in there. But then again, also I did go and see Hades Town, and that is the songs that are on repeat in my head.
You know
So
what? That there might be a little connection there.
I'm gonna go with there's a well, actually, Hades Town is all about a red flower.
Well,
So
see, there you go.
there's a big, if you look at any of the artwork for it, it's all black, white, and red. So yes, that's interesting. That is interesting. I didn't put that
Hmm.
together before. P.S. If you haven't seen it, 100% recommend. You would love Hades Town. Do you
I
know
haven't
about
seen
it?
it. No. Is it a
Oh,
live performance or a
yeah,
movie?
it's a musical. All of the songs are on Spotify, but if you
Okay.
were to see the musical, it is Orpheus and Eurydice, but like a retelling set in Louisiana with like blues folky
Okay.
music.
I will definitely have to watch it when it comes to town.
It's so good. It's so good. So highly recommend.
That's great. I love live musicals.
So as a writer, what
Mhm.
lessons did you learn through the journey of writing The Red Mother?
A lot of the lessons I think I learned when writing this book came in the acceptance of realizing that I haven't gotten it quite right yet, or that I actually cannot just pump this out. I have
Mm,
to write until I get to the point where this is a good, I'm struggling. That means I need to stop right here. I need to come back to this when it's ready to be fed to me, when it's ready to receive, if that makes sense.
mm-hmm,
I am definitely not someone who I'm sure could always have a deadline because the way that I write really comes to me when it comes to me. And I'll go through sometimes long bouts of not writing anything at all. And then all of a sudden, like a whole week will go by and it's just like go, 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 go. Accepting that steady pace, or that unsteady pace, I should say, not um, very sporadic. It's one of those things that I've come to accept with my own writing. It comes to me when it's time to come to me, when I'm ready to learn it. I think the biggest thing also is definitely give it a few proofreads before you start sending it out to people. Individually, at least. I always send them to one of my friends afterward and say, like, tell me what you think. Like, as soon as I finished writing it, I would send it. And then
mm-hmm.
within the first couple paragraphs, I'm like, I probably should have read this first.
I feel that. I have beta readers for my own novel, and the amount of times I've gotten like a comment like, did did you mean to finish this sentence? Or and I've just stopped midway and just not finished. I'm like, oh, I guess
Hmm.
I don't know what happened there. And I have proofread this. Just totally
Right?
missed it. Because you're so in it. You just
Hmm.
completely miss stuff because you're so you know what you're supposed to say. You know what you wanted to say. So you miss all the things that you didn't actually say. So getting people to read over it is huge. Did you have any like rituals? Did you have an altar that you built for writing this, or for feeling in the energy of the Red Mother? Was there any magic involved in how this book came to be?
Magic in general, no, I would say it really was about. I'm not sure if I've told you this before. I always do my writing on the elliptical, so I'm in perpetual motion when I write.
Yep, love that.
So that's I hate saying that getting on the elliptical is magical, but there is a trance state involved that comes with this perpetual motion, the zoom, 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 zoom on the same setting on a high incline. I get into an extremely, in my opinion, I call it an in-between state, a flow
Mm-hmm.
state. It changes the way that I flow when I write. And it's something that if I were sitting on the couch, I couldn't just do. If I were sitting at a computer, I don't think I'd be able to do.
Mm.
Um, I have started using many of the chants and some of the magic of the Red Mother from the very first book, and that was actually one of the things that started inspiring other stories as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've called upon her on several things in my life recently, definitely for healing, for help for other people and for myself, um, to change circumstances. I've made like the red ink that I talk about in the book. There is a level of not magic as well that I've been more and more inspired. And what happens is I'll start with doing one thing that I feel inspired by specifically from her, and it's kind of prolific. It starts spawning other things. And I know the question is about writing, but it was more so where did many of these ideas for the writing
Mm.
kind of spawn from? And they did spawn from acts of creation, acts of magic that would kind of just like put these other ideas in my head that this is another act of magic
Mm.
and you need to write about it. I need to write about this. And that how they came about really started that way.
Mm-hmm. I think the being on the elliptical, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Okay. My brain says ecliptic because that's astrology talk. The elliptical, it's very mercurial, being in that constant state of motion
Yes.
and that sort of transient almost energy, even though you're not moving anywhere, but you are moving. So that
Yeah.
would be wonderful for writing. I can absolutely see that being a
It
great way
creates
to
a very
channel that.
open, yeah, very open communicative state.
So that's beautiful.
Thank
What
you.
what have you used your red ink for? Are you using it in petitions or?
Mostly, yeah, petitions,
Hmm.
sigil work.
Hmm.
I actually broke my quill thing, so I've been using more of a red Sharpie
Oh no.
lately. When I know I need to get another one. Uh, but a lot of times the red ink in general is used for drawing out sigils, writing petitions, a
Hmm.
lot of written magic. There is actually a story in here called Red Inscriptions.
Hmm.
It's a two-part. There's a story, and then there's an actual section in the Grimoire where it teaches you how to use these inscriptions.
Hmm.
Um, And it does involve using a cipher with these very specific symbols. And the story, which I think is really cool, a lot of people are afraid. We just had an episode of necromancy come out for Southern Bramble, and I want to kind of point out that a lot of people have a lot of different ideas about what necromancy is,
Hmm.
but this was my story that I got really excited about because it creates an act of necromancy, inviting in the spirits
Hmm.
of the outcast, the spirits of our ancestor witches, the spirits of my queer ancestors to
Hmm.
form themselves on paper in these symbols. To make an offering to them, to invite them to engage with the living. To those who are interested in my desire, join me here now. And using these red inscriptions, work acts of magic with me.
Mm. I feel like I get shivers. Oh, it's beautiful. I think you've done a really good job putting all of this together. What, I guess, without jumping too far ahead, what have you planned for the whole, I think, thing as a series or as a collection? Is it going to be
Collection,
like
yeah.
4 books? Are you thinking more?
Yeah, I am thinking about four. Four
Okay.
books for this is the perfect collection. There's a very specific direction each one is going to go in.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, if you've read the first, might have a guess. There are going to be kind of three separate areas of
Mm-hmm.
magic that
Mm-hmm.
it's going to focus on, and maybe three separate characters that are
Mm-hmm.
introduced in the first book. But this is the first of that
Mm-hmm. It's like a deep
rest of the
dive.
series. Yeah,
Yeah. It's like
it's
each one becomes a deep dive of the character and element, or element's the wrong word. Mm. Focal point of that character,
focal
vibe.
point because they're not all going to be the same. It's not all going to
Mm-hmm.
be a just a collection of stories and then magic. They're I've been really excited about approaching these from different perspectives. Um, it's really kind of, as my writing has been shifting and growing and evolving, I'm starting to now see many of these spirits because I do consider them spirits. The characters in
100%.
my book are spirits.
You've
They're there
created
for
spirits.
that exactly, they're created spirits, whether that's an idea of chaos magic or servitors or something that exists because it does. As an
Hmm.
animist, I believe everything that exists has spirit. These
Yeah.
characters are part of my craft. They're educating me. And the more I write, the more I realize they're coming at me in different ways. It's really fascinating, and
Mm,
I'm really excited in the direction that's going. It's when I say it's become part of my craft, it really feels as though a lot of people, when they talk about witchcraft, they think it's all like actions and spells and rituals. But it's also about that relationship with spirits, that relationship building, those commitments, the willing to learn, the willing to be pushed, the pushback, the way in which we build these relationships with the spirits of the world. Um, that's become so much more part of my craft than just the act of casting a spell, if that makes sense.
yes. Yes. There is so much more to it. It is so much deeper. And yes, do you think writing these books has changed the way you work as a witch?
100%.
Mm,
Absolutely. Um, there's there are things that you can tell very clearly have inspired me when you read this, but the application of it is entirely new slash entirely different slash entirely personalized to the
mm,
practitioner. And I do think that there are so many classic grimoirists and ceremonial practitioners. I don't mean this as a diss whatsoever, but feel very bound by the rules of the book. And
hmm
I do feel like many of these rules of the book were put in place by very privileged men with lots of money and time to spare.
hmm
Not all of us have that. That's what makes the
hmm
witch. She's the one, he's the one, they're the one who works with the elements available, the elements you have bioregionally.
Mm. You even bring that in. So, in certain stories where
Mhm,
the Red Mother is crafting spells, and there's one story in particular where there's almost like a series of spells in quick succession. They're all slightly different. They all kind of call on the same energy. And you can see how they're sort of grasping for what's around and what might be needed. And
mhm,
you write the thought process in. You write, oh, she couldn't find this, so she did this.
mhm.
You've almost like written the substitution thought process in there in as part of the story and as part of what the character's doing, which I think is so wonderful because as someone reading and then like learning from it or absolutely learning from it, you read that and go, oh, okay, so if she's done that, then if I don't have this, I could do this. And it makes you think outside the box of take these ingredients and place them in
Mhm.
this order. Like it is more well-rounded, more fluid, more natural, I guess, or
Yeah,
instinctive.
it is. It's very instinctive, and there are several stories in here where we talk about okay, so I need three spirits of flora who fit with this theme.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking protection. Well, what am I going to choose? I don't have a list of spirit. I don't have a Llewellyn's complete book of correspondences
Yeah.
with me. But I might go about thinking, well, there's a mighty oak that grows in my the corner. It has extreme deep roots. It's strong. It's over 200 years old, so it's huge. It's seen a lot of time. It's about strength. It protects me with the shade. I'm going to take an acorn and use that for protection.
Mm-hmm.
93. What else am I going to use? Well, you know what? I'm going to use black pepper specifically because it acts as a warding agent against those who would do me harm. I'm also going to use pine. Look at those pine needles. They're
They're
sharp.
nice and
They're
sharp.
like they're
Yes.
nice and sharp.
I think
They
pine
have a
was
pungent
a
scent.
was a
Substitution.
substitution. Yes.
Hmm.
I remember reading that specifically and thinking, oh,
Yeah,
clever, clever.
that was the witch and the madam story.
Yes, I loved that story. Are you
Hmm.
open to sharing a little
Sure,
more on that
absolutely.
one?
So
Yeah.
The Witch and the Madam is I think, a really fascinating, I think it's a very liberating story
Yeah.
because it actually dips into sex work.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that uh, it is one of the oldest professions in the world.
Yes.
It is something that I do not think that should have a stigma or be shameful. I
Agreed.
love the world of OnlyFans where people can be sex workers outwardly, openly,
Mm-hmm.
We all sell our bodies. I sell my feet by standing all day. I sell my hands by cutting with them. I sell my voice while speaking to clients. I sell I sell my emotional status when I get home from work and I'm so frazzled by dealing with everyone else's crap.
Hmm.
Like we're always selling ourselves in some way, shape, or form. And this story gets right down to the bare bones of it. It does involve a the character, the Red Mother, when she is very young, working in a brothel
Hmm.
and striking a deal with their madam to work magic for her if she can have a place to stay. And she herself goes through some healing in that process, taking back power of her own body, taking back
Hmm.
power of her own choices. And when that power is possibly threatened, she knows what to do to get it back.
Hmm. I thought it was beautifully written. There's
Thank you.
definitely I think with this book, especially more of this sexual nature comes through with the Red
Hmm.
Mother. I mean, she's bisexual or pansexual. I'm not sure if you chose one or the other, but she's got lots of lovers, and
Hmm.
I think that's really informing her magic as she goes through, and it shows us, honestly, most of the time, it's because of one of these experiences that she's having to work this really powerful magic. It's like deeper because of these connections she's made with people along the
Hmm.
way. So I think it's really, really beautiful. But I thought the whole story was so well rounded and different, and it was a little bit longer than the other ones, but not in a bad way, in a really interesting way. I kind of wanted more. I was like, can we go? I want to hear about the other people in there. Like, what are they doing? And how is this going? Like, you could do a whole spin-off series.
Oh, truly. I know, right? I'm just imagining the Netflix series
Yeah.
now.
I love it. And when we think of this almost like sexual nature of this red mother that's coming through in these stories, and then I think of other times of seeing things like these red cloaks, and we think of things like the Handmaid's Tale, right? And
Hmm.
the role that they had to play in that, and how it's often associated with, you know, midwifery or blood, or like the results of some forms of sexuality. Like, it's really this intimate aspect of just even that color psychology of red. It's intimate,
Hmm.
it's power, it's sexuality, it's strong, it's passion. So
Hmm.
it really shines through in her as a character and how she's bringing her magic out through the world. I think it's really lovely.
Thank you. Red especially is one of those colors where when we look throughout the history of purity culture, again, I'm
Mm-hmm.
in Texas, I know about purity
Mm-hmm.
culture here. The shame involved in owning your sexuality, the shame
Mm-hmm.
involved in speaking up for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
choosing sovereignty, to be free. There's a whole line in there, one of the things when she talks about herself, she goes, I'm a free woman. And you have to understand, there is no time period specifically in here, but you kind of
Mm-hmm.
get it's in the ye yesteryear. To be a free woman,
Mm-hmm.
making one's own choices,
Making
owning
your
not
own
only your,
money.
making your own money, making your own choices, having the freedom to discover your sexuality
Mm-hmm.
without an act of shame. And then, of course, many of these stories they involve having to fight back against that shame, whether that's
Yep.
through magic, whether that's through justice, or whether that's just through your actions alone. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot about the way I had to fight back my own shame growing up in a conservative state, being
Mm-hmm.
told from a very young age that the thoughts that were in my head were a sin, that they were bad, that I needed to put them somewhere else. And if I just
Mm-hmm.
prayed the right way, it would go away. Like the- that's really hard as a
Mm-hmm.
child to comprehend. It starts from such a it makes you think the things that are going on in your own psyche make you inherently bad.
Mm-hmm.
And no child should have to experience that. And to be perfectly honest, no adult should either. I think these are things we should celebrate, and I think these are things that I wanted to celebrate with the Red Mother in this book. I wanted her. Because you get a good chunk of her life. You get this age all the way to 17, all the way to middle years.
Mm.
You get to see the evolution of this woman who has gone through a lot of experience, ups
She's
and
gone through a
downs.
lot.
She's gone through a lot, and there are times when she's vengeful, and then there are times when she's willing to sacrifice everything for people she doesn't even know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is is she a part of you in a way?
I think in a way, I think she's also a part of all of us in a way.
Mm,
I think the way in which you described reading this, feeling in touch with her like you knew her,
mm,
that's I hate to say that's by design, but that is more so its purpose.
mm-hmm,
I definitely feel parts of myself identify with her. And there are other parts where I didn't know how to identify yet until I'd written her story.
mm-hmm,
And I think that there are going to be a lot of people, in my opinion, who are going to be very touched by her stories, who are going to feel like I can experience her spirit reading this. I know her now. I feel
yeah.
closer to her. I feel her magic when I work it. And that's actually something I do want to touch on. If you were to flip to the back of this book, to the Grimoire section, and just start working
Mm-hmm,
the magic, to be perfectly honest, I don't think it would work for you,
mm.
because you haven't made those connections first. The stories are the prerequisite to have access to that magic.
I love the concept of having this emotional connection before you can work that magic.
Hmm.
I think it feels more powerful, absolutely, because if you just read a recipe, sometimes it can feel really flat. And I have found with my own magic, maybe the first time I work a spell, it does feel a little flat, but then the next time it works better, and the next time it works better. And I'm building on that story of using that spell or that recipe and the history of how, when I've come to it, and I've built my own story around it. And that's where my power comes from with that particular one.
Absolutely.
If you're reading a story first, you're almost like skipping a few steps. You're getting there earlier in a way. I think that's a really clever and unique way to do this. And gosh, now I'm getting this like little inspiration hit of, imagine if you sat down with a spell you wanted to do and you created a story about it first and created a character and created the problem and the solution and the outcome and then did your magic. What a way to raise energy.
Oh, I mean, talk about your cone of power. I mean, that is the energy raised in the process of writing these stories is
Mm,
what really, I think, feeds the magic itself.
mhm,
Um, that's that's the whole point of Cunning Words. The narrative is the thing that not only teaches you, but gives you access to the magic that powers it.
mhm, mhm. Oh, it's such a good concept. I think I love it. I love it. If you can't
Thank
tell,
you.
I love it.
Thank you.
All right. So, anything else that you want to share about this for people who haven't yet, you know, read it or seen it or heard about it
Mhm.
or read the first one? What's something that everyone should, I guess, understand before they go out and seek it out?
Well, first off, understand that I am a self-published, independent, small artist and author. So if you buy my book, you're not supporting, I mean, I'm publishing through Amazon, so I guess there's some support there, but you are getting the words from my mouth. You are not getting something that has been, edited and dwindled down to be the most sellable. You're not getting a cover that was created to be, again, the most marketable. The title was chosen by me. The artwork, the illustrations are all mine. The stories are all mine. Everything that was created was done so from such an individualistic viewpoint. And I do think growing up with the access to books that I had that all seemed to surround, it was almost like everyone was picking up information for each other and writing it about again.
Yeah,
I I want to say right now, you're not going to get that with Cunning Words and the Red Mother.
I agree.
You're gonna get something entirely new, but something that feels deeply ancient and old. It's going to touch you, I believe, in a way that's going to make you go, this is what I've been missing from my craft.
Mm.
These spirits, and I do want to say this is kind of funny, actually. This book actually is a spirit compendium. Um,
Mhm.
Throughout many of the stories, you actually get to see her perform acts of spirit conjuration, but in the
Mhm.
back, you will see there are the spirits. These are their actual ceremonies of magic to call upon and work with
Mhm.
them. And these spirits were created for us as witches to access different virtues, desires, to literally stitch together the magic that exists all around us to create these spirits to work with, to
Mm.
to to enact magic in your reality. And I think that's one of the things that was one of my favorite about this was writing the stories and then actually working with many of these spirits myself. I
Mm.
worked with the spirit of Sana, which is a spirit of healing on a friend of mine who had open heart surgery, and he came out of it on the other side doing wonderfully. I've used the three wise healers on my own dog just last week on a regular
Mm.
basis. Like I'm using and working with these spirits, and so far everything has been wildly successful and wonderful outcomes.
Fantastic. And one of the other things is a lot
Mhm.
of some books that are out there, especially the ones that are written by AI, but a lot of books out there, sometimes they're just written to, as you've said before, like meet a deadline or to be sellable. And, you know, I have met people who have said they haven't even done all of the spells in a book that they've written, which I
Mhm.
was like, I could never. Like, what do you mean? Like, you've got to check it. Like, I don't know. So I think yours has this like actual soul to it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No, I
There's a
love that.
soul in there.
I have been lucky enough to be exposed to some wonderful publishers, some really I can say
Go for
shitty.
it. Go for
Shitty publishers. I've
it.
seen some wonderful editors who really care about keeping your work
Hmm.
yours. And I've seen some that'll just straight, no, that's we need 50,000 words, no more. You need to cut this many thousands of
Yeah.
words out because it's not about the content. It's about sellability.
Mm.
And I've talked to some authors who said this, this one approached me to write a book about this, so I did.
Hmm.
And and again, that can be wonderful. They could have a lot to contribute.
Oh yeah.
Um, but I want to read a book from someone who's impassioned about exactly what they're writing.
Hmm.
I want to read a book about someone by someone who said, "This is what I know. This is what I experienced. This is what I want to write about."
Yeah. Yeah. As I said, those are the ones that they have soul, they have power, they
Hmm.
stick with you, similar to those Greek myths, right? Or any form
Yeah,
of mythology. I keep saying Greek because it's my hyperfixation right now, but
sure.
mythology sticks with you. It sits in your psyche for so long, and it gets retold and redone and read this because there is soul to it. And I think yours have that similar aspect where it's going to be referenced or retold, or there's more to it. It's got meat on its bones.
I want these stories to be retold. I want people who have this book to go out to campfires with their friends and say, "Hey, I have some camp stories I want to share with you guys." I
Have you
want
heard the
people
story about the
ha-
robin and the snake? Like,
have yes, exactly. Have you there are I want these stories to touch people in a way that they feel that the magic is inside of them now because they've read it. And
mm-hmm,
I want them to be like, I need to this so my friend so and so to read this. I need my mother to read this. I need so and
mm-hmm,
so to read. I'm going to send this to them because they need to read this story.
mm-hmm,
I see my own mother in this story. I see my sister in this story. I think they're going to touch people. I believe they're going to touch people. And I think people are going to be surprised by their own feelings when they read some of them, because I think even some of the most virtuous people will agree that some people deserve their just desserts, and sometimes
mm-hmm,
it's nice to watch it happen.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And where can people find this? You mentioned Amazon. Is that the only place to buy it?
Yes. So as of right now, at the moment that this episode is coming out, I am self-published on Amazon KDP, so it's going to be available in Kindle and black and white paperback or a color hardcover option.
Mm-hmm,
Obviously the color will be red, but so far, yes, on Amazon.
mm-hmm,
Eventually in the near future it'll be available in Ingram Spark, so metaphysical shops, occult shops, bookstores, you'll be able to order it from the Ingram Spark catalog. At that point it'll also be available, I believe, on like barnesandnoble.com, but first off, at the very beginning, Amazon
mm-hmm.
definitely,
Your
and pretty
website as well?
worldwide. I don't have a website.
Oh, really?
I know. I just have a big old fat link tree with lots and lots of links on it. I
Okay.
am, I know I have to be honest, I'm not actually very technologically advanced. Um, I should probably look into having a website, but then I have to pay for a domain name. I mean,
Not not always. I mean, there are ways to do it for free,
I, that's true. That's true. That's definitely true. Um,
but yes, I mean,
Eventually, I think I'll be able to have some copies on my Etsy shop to do sign, but not at the
Yeah.
beginning because I have to order a bunch to do that, and then I'm
Hmm.
stuck with like a suitcase of books till I sell out.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the side of self-publishing.
Yeah, the small artist.
Yes. I feel that. I feel that. Uh, okay. So perhaps in the future on your Etsy shop. Got it. And in the meantime, Amazon. Wonderful. I will pop a link in the description box for everyone to jump on that. Or maybe I'll just put a link to your link tree.
That's fine too. It'll be there.
That will also work. And then there's all
Yeah.
the other links as well. They can find your podcast and et cetera, et cetera, et
Absolutely.
cetera.
And if you're listening to this for the first time, if you've never seen me before, hi, it's so nice to meet you. But also check out my link tree because I actually have tons of free resources in there. I know some people have actually made it a little button on their home screen because there's free lists of herbal correspondences. There's free directions on how to create tinctures, pull oils. There's free directions on planetary hour calculator, planetary days, working with the days of the week. There's just
Mm-hmm.
so many free resource links on there that I've been compiling over the years. And I want everyone to have that access because I think that that's the kind of stuff. Sometimes I'm a big believer in gatekeeping our own personal gnosis until we're ready to
Mm-hmm.
share it. But when it comes to actual access to information that's out there, compiling it in one place and giving free access to everyone is like the name of my game. I want
Yeah.
people to have this information at their fingertips.
I love that. I I was in the shower like yesterday, no, day before, and I was trying to figure out the planetary hour, which
Yeah.
I'm in the shower, right? I don't have my calculator with me. And so I'm having to like remember, I was like, I know how to do this. I have to go into the recesses of my mind. So then I was like, oh, I just need to draw a septogram. So I'm like, oh crap, how do I draw a septogram again? So my husband comes in and I'm drawing all these like really terrible seven-pointed stars all over the like they just look not right. I couldn't quite get it. And he's like, what are you doing? It's like, they're like pentagrams, but they're not right. And I was like, I'm trying to draw a septogram. And I finally did it. And I was like, oh, wait, I need the sunrise time. Can you look up the sunrise time? And then by that point, I was ready to get out of the shower. I was like, I can just looked at my planetary calculator one.
Actually, I should just use the planetary calculator.
Yes, yes. But I love that you've got that in there because a lot of people don't know that that's a thing, that you
Yeah.
can just type in whatever time you want and it'll tell you what the hour is in terms of what planet rules that hour, which is
Yeah.
so helpful for
Mhm.
certain magics. 100%. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for sharing all about the Red Mother and your book and your magic and your wisdom and your stories with us. I'm sure they're going to stick with a lot of people, and I hope everyone goes out and buys your book.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure as always.
Yay. All right, everyone. As I said, links will be in the description box for this episode below, and we will chat with you next time. I told you that was good. I told you that was a good episode. I had so much fun. I always have so much fun chatting with Marshall. He's an absolute delight. Before you run off today, I have a few housekeeping things to chat about. Number one, if you are listening to this at the time that it airs, which is around mid-October, keep in mind that means Halloween is in 2 weeks' time. That also means that Samhain or Beltane, depending on your hemisphere, is also in 2 weeks' time. And I know a lot of you have complained of being blindsided or forgetting about the Sabbats. So this is your little witchy reminder to have a think for a moment about how you would like to spend those days. Do you want to celebrate on the actual day or do you want to kind of do it on the weekend? Remember, we talked about being more flexible with these dates in the episode I did with Cat Borealis around adapting your Wheel of the Year. But it can be a good idea now in preparation to stop, have a think, and choose one small thing that you're going to do. If it's for Beltane, maybe you just light a candle. It can be as simple as that. Or have a simmer pot. Spend some time outside in the sunshine. Like there's just small things you can do, but when you plan them in advance, they become intentional. So there's your little witchy prep warning. The next couple of things I want to talk about are more suburban witchery business associated, which you'd know about if you're on my email list. But if you're not, or if you missed it, I just wanted to give you the heads up that my premier digital course product, which is called The Art of Psychic Divination, Level 1, perfect for beginners, is opening on November 1st. And this will be the final run that I do of this course live, which means the final time I'll be guiding you through it personally, doing the live psychic development circles. They are so, like, if you can get to those live, they are so incredibly fun. So November 1st, that's the date to remember, because if you enroll in the first 24 hours, you will save $300. That is a whopper of a saving. And I have had people say this course literally changed their lives, changed their career outlook, like everything. Is very near and dear to my heart, and it is exactly what you need to develop your psychic skills, but also your divination skills, because we go over like 10 different divination types. It's amazing. The waitlist for that is in the description below. Next couple of things to just be aware of as we near the end of the year, and I will be taking a break with the podcast over Christmas, so prepare yourselves. I am prepping to print out a very limited run of witchy desktop planners this year. So when you see them drop, I suggest you run to get yours. I won't be doing a US version in a printed copy because, guys, you begged me for those and they just did not sell very well. So I don't know what happened there, but it's not a viable business option for me to do that again. There will be a downloadable PDF version, but just not the physical planners. I will have the physical ones for Australia, Southern Hemisphere though, but again, very limited run. I am only printing 50 of them. So yes, that also means the Plan Your Year the Witch Way class, which was incredibly popular last year, will be back in December. It's only available for December. That's the only time you can get it. That also means the Word of the Year readings are also coming back in December. So keep your eye out for when those drop as well. But that is all the housekeeping I wanted to inform you of. I hope you're having a magical day. I hope you're having a magical week. And if not, I hope that listening today has helped bring a little bit of magic in where it wasn't before. So I hope you have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world today. And I will catch you next week when we'll be talking about when tarot gets tricky. I'll see you there.